Alright, thanks for joining everyone. Welcome to today's CI Tools webinar. I hope the audio and video are coming through clearly. You should be able to see ArchiCAD on screen at the moment. I've just shifted across to a new way of doing this stream, so hopefully this is all working okay. But if you have any trouble with what you're hearing or what you're seeing or anything, please just let me know in the chat panel. I will be going in to check in on that occasionally as we go through. In fact, let me just have a quick check now. Alright, so welcome to the weekly CI Tools webinar. My name is Josh Osborne and I'm the Product Manager for the CI Tools here at Central Innovation. And this is a weekly webinar where we go over some frequently asked questions about the CI Tools. Sometimes we look at how to use a tool starting from scratch. Sometimes we look at advanced features or maybe workflows that are slightly unusual or that you haven't heard of that you could do or anything like that. The topics that I cover for these are based on requests that I've gotten from customers. So if you do have any sort of things about the CI Tools that you would like to see shown at one of these webinars, please just log a support ticket with our support team and just say, hey, I'd like to see you cover thing X in one of your webinars, and that will make its way to me, and I can show those in a future version of one of these webinars. If you have any questions as we go, please, as I said, enter those into the chat panel. I will check in on that from time to time as we go. So enter those in there, and if I have time to answer them online, I will do. And if not, I'll either create a support ticket to follow up with you, or we'll cover it in a future webinar. With all that said, today we are going to be looking at the Doors and Windows tool, and this will just be an introduction of the Doors and Windows tool. So this will be to people who are new to the Doors and Windows tool. Maybe you've started using it, maybe you've started trialing it recently, or maybe you have it as part of your ArchiCAD and you haven't given it a go yet. This will be for you to show you how to get up and running with it, why you might want to use it, and what you can use it for and that sort of thing. But if you have any questions about it, even if you're not a new user, as we go through, just let me know and I'll see if I can help out as we go through. I'm going to be working in ArchiCAD 27 today. However, pretty much everything that I'm going to be showing today, because it's sort of the basics and why you might want to use it and that sort of thing, we're not going to be getting into particularly advanced stuff. So everything that I show today will be available in most older versions of the tool, going back at least 4 or 5 versions or so. So if you're using a recentish version of ArchiCAD, what you're seeing today will look like what you have there. If you are using an older version, how much it looks like it will vary, but you should still be able to get the basic idea of how the tool works and why it would be useful. So to start with, the Doors and Windows tool. What is the Doors and Windows tool? Why would you care about the Doors and Windows tool? There's Doors and Windows built into ArchiCAD. Why would you need an extra one? That's probably the sort of thing you might be thinking if you don't use our Doors and Windows tool. There's a couple of reasons, but just to start with, as you may know, we have the CI Tools package encompasses a total of about 15 or so tools, I think, at the moment, and they vary as to what they do, but generally the tools can be broken up into 2 groups. There's tools that are useful for creating things that you couldn't normally do in ArchiCAD easily, or maybe taking something to a greater degree of customization and then you would be able to do with a sort of a vanilla object. So that's about half of the tools, and then the other half of the tools are aimed at just increasing your productivity, getting rid of annoying to do things out of ArchiCAD, so that you don't have to remember to do things that could be automated and that sort of thing. The Doors and Windows tool is very much focused on the first part there, so it's all aimed at making it so that you can create basically any window or door that you can sort of think of, really. So we are aiming for just a very, very high degree of flexibility and customization for our doors and windows. And so that's what I'll be showing you through here. So the main reason that you might want to use our door and window tool, if you are thinking about using it, is simply because you should be able to create a much wider range of doors and windows using these. And then once you do create the doors and windows that you want, you'll be able to make those customized to specifically what you want to a much higher degree of detail than you would with a generic window or door. So to access the Doors or Windows tool, once you have them installed, just go to your Window and Door tool like you would normally. I'll start with a window, and you would want to look in the CI Tools Library 27 or whatever version you're on. So normally when you're looking for a window, you'd be looking under Object Library 27, Windows 27, and then you choose one of these folders and you choose the window that you want. So one of the main things that you need to do when you are starting to build a window in ArchiCAD is that you need to choose what kind of window you're going to place. So we can go through here and we can say, well, in this case, I probably want to do a double. If you come back later and you want to change it to a triple, you have to change to a different object. One of the first things that our tool is aiming to do is to remove you from having to make that decision at the very beginning of the process. So rather than coming in here and having to decide right away which type of window you want to place, window with side light for instance, maybe you decide later that you don't want a side light, maybe you just haven't thought that far ahead yet, we're removing that decision from the process. So if we go to the CI Tools library, you'll see there's just one object, and that is the CI Tools window, and this will allow us to do all of those other types of windows, but it's all within the single object, so you don't have to decide beforehand what you're going to do. The main reason for this is so that we wanted to allow it so that you can place a window at any part of the design and documentation process. It doesn't matter how much detail you want in it. So you could place a window at the very, very beginning of the design process. At that point, maybe all you want is to say, roughly in this wall, I want a window somewhere. I don't care about the details yet. I just want a window to be there. Draw Window tool will let you do that. Just drop your window in there. Then once you get further down the track and you want to add detail to this, you want to turn it into something closer to what you want your actual window to be like. You don't have to do anything except add that detail that you want. You don't have to change objects. You don't have to move it around or do anything like that. You just add in the detail that you want. And this will allow you to go all the way through the process. So once you get to the documentation level and you're wanting to get it specifically showing in the exact way that you want it to, the settings are here for you to be able to do that as well. So it will be with you at every step of the design process, regardless of where you actually put the window in. So with the windows and doors, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go through a couple of the sort of main settings in the window and door tool, in the window specifically, so that we can see how you will get started with creating this window. Obviously we could place it in just as it is, but we'll customize it a little bit more before we drop it into our wall. So you can see it's defaulting to a specific size, 1200 by 1500 in this case. And the first thing that we're going to do here, and this is probably what you'll want to do first in most cases when you're starting to add detail, after you've got it set to the size that you want to set out what's actually in this window. So we have this little interface here which will graphically show you what the window is currently made up of. So you can see at the moment I have this panel here selected, and you can see over on the right it's showing me what it is currently set to. So I have a single panel inside this window and it's set to fixed pane. So what we can do now is we can start building out the structure of the actual window. So to do that, we use these plus and minus buttons down the bottom to add or remove panels from our window arrangement. So if I select this panel here and hit the plus, it's going to add a second panel in. So you can see I now have two panels displayed here, and those are displaying in my actual window as well. And you can see that they are both showing the same fixed pane icon here. So we have two fixed panes at the moment. And then we can continue going through here to build up the structure that we want. So let's deselect this side, and with the one selected on the left, we'll come into insert here, and we're going to say, actually, I want to have a panel below it as well. So it'll go through and do that. So you can see we now have our third pane available. And they're all still showing as fixed panes here. So we can go through and build up what we want. I'm pretty happy with this. So we've got a window on the side and then two main windows here. The next thing you want to do is tell it what each of these panels should actually be. So they've all defaulted to be fixed panes, but we don't want that in this case. We'll say that this one on the bottom here will actually be a fixed pane, so I'll leave that as it is. And then I'll go up to the top here, and I'm going to set this one to open. So I'll go into fixed pane here, and instead of having a fixed one, we'll go down to awning. So we'll set that to be an awning. You can see as soon as I do that, I get the change in the frames because of the opening panel there, and we can also see our opening line being drawn on there. Then I'll deselect that one and I'll select the one on the right, and we can go through and say actually this one here should be, let's go with some louvers on the right. And you can see that when I select that, it does it. If I go to that elevation view, you can see that a bit more easily. So now I've set out the set out of the panels, and I've set what I want to be in the panels. For now, this is looking like what I want, so I'm going to hit OK, and then I'm just going to go through here and put it down somewhere. I'll put it here. Just places like an ordinary window, you place it in the wall, choose the direction that it opens to, and then you will have it there ready to go. So if I go in here, you can see the window that we just created. So we've got our opening awning here, we've got our fixed pane below it, and we've got our louvers on the side there. So it's doing pretty much exactly what we wanted it to for this particular wall. And you can just keep going with this at this point. So coming back into here, you can basically create any sort of setup that you might want to do. But now we're going to move on to look at the various other parts of the window, because obviously the setup of the panels is not the only thing that you're concerned about with your windows. So there are some other settings that we want to look at. I'm just going to quickly pop out and see if we have any questions, and then we will move on from there. Okay. All right. Looking good. Whoops. Where's ArchiCAD? Okay, so I'll now go through some of the other settings. Key dimensions is one of the main ones that you'll want to check. So we're now starting to add additional detail to our window. We're going to do things like setting what shape we want the frame to be, what size we want the frame to be, what sort of trims we want to have, and that sort of thing. So the first place to check for that is the key dimensions, to make sure that everything is the sizings that we want. Obviously we have our overall sizing, 1200 by 1500, but all of our sub-sizings beneath that can be set in here. So you can see our sizes shown here. And the layout shown over here. Specifically, you can see the C and D values here. The C is the height of this one here. So it's this bottom, inserted bottom panel height. So we can increase the size of this panel here by just changing that. So if we go to 500, we'll see that takes up a bit more room there. If we had inserted a panel above, that would be set by this value here. So we could set that one as well. And then if you have a row below or above, the widths of those are also set here as well. We don't have any of those at the moment, but that's where the setting for those are. And you can see there's settings down the bottom here to control where they are measured to, and if you want to have repeating units. So if we come through here, you'll be able to see that we can say we actually run a bunch of repeats, and it just repeats everything. So this is useful if you're creating, say, a big curtain wall or something like that. You can set out the basic set out that you want, and then come in here and tell it how many repeats you want, and then you could have, say, a 10 meter wide unit that has 4 repeats of that same set out that you had. I'm just going to go with single in this case, but that's the option to do that. And then we can look at the shape as well. In probably 90% of cases, the shape will be flat and flat, but for the other 10% of cases where it's not that, we have quite a few options available. So for the head shape, we have all of these ones here. I won't go through all of them. They're pretty self-explanatory. We can come in here and we can say we want an arch type. And once we do that, we get further settings for how the arch should work. So you can see it applies an arch top there. And then we have some settings here. So A and B are the offset from the sides. So we could enter, say, a 300 here, and you will see that it will offset inward by 300 before the arch begins. And then we also have C and D, which is the distance of the drop from the top. So the arch height it is called here, but essentially you can see on the little drawing here that it is the distance between the top of the frame and the base of the arch there. So if I enter 200 here, we'll get a shallower arch, and if I enter 600 here, we'll get a much deeper arch. So you can change the shape of the arch in that way. The sill shape works in the same way. So we can go in here and we can choose different types. We can say, let's go with rounded corners for this one. It just goes ahead and does those, and then we have our settings for them again. So you can choose the inset from the edge for the roundedness of the corner, 200 by 250 on these in this case. And that will just set up those settings for us, and we'll get frames shaped like what we wanted there. I'm going to turn both of those off because I don't want to have either of them, but if you want anything like that, there's plenty of control for that there. And while we're here, just briefly, we also have the adjacency or the joining settings here. So this will let you choose what happens at each of these frames. So everything is set to be a frame at the moment, but in certain cases you may not want to do this. So for instance, if this window was meeting in a corner with another window, you might want to set one of the sides to be a corner post instead, in which case you'll get a post there with a mitre angle on it, or a glass joint, which will do the same, except you don't get a post and you don't get a frame, so it's just directly the glass stops there, and you get a mitre angle for the frame there, and an extension should you need one. So if you're doing anything a little bit more unusual, like joins in that way, the controls for those are there, and we get the same sort of thing for the head and the sill as well. The next thing that you might want to look at, obviously the glazing panel layout we've already seen, but the next thing you might want to look at is the frame settings. So you can see if I select the frame here, we have quite a few different controls over how the frame is dimensioned. So this diagram here should be relatively self-explanatory as to what everything does in all of our objects. If the diagram isn't entirely self-explanatory, you can always hover over the entry box for that thing, and a little tooltip will pop up giving you the text of what that thing is as well. So if you get a little bit lost, you can go there. But we can, for instance, come in here and say, well, actually I want my frames to be quite a lot wider. So we can say make those 60. Hit that, and you see that our frames grow to 60. So you can go in here and set up all of these values to be exactly what you might want them to be. So for instance, we could turn this one right down and get nice thin frames here again. We've got settings for door stops and corner posts, if that makes sense for the thing that you're using. Obviously, door stops in this case don't, but if we were making a door, those would be useful there. And then you can go further down the settings as well, so you can define what the sill will look like if you have one. So we can come in here and say draw a sill on, and you'll see that sort of hanging on the bottom there, and also the inner frame as well. So that will define the frame settings of the inner parts of the frames for the panels that you have in there. The glass settings let you set what kind of glass you have, so what the material is for the glass, and the measurements for the glass, and also how much glazing that you actually have there. And then the next part that you might want to use is the trims. So we've got quite a few options here. We've got exterior trims, and there are 4 different types of those. We've got a head molding. So for all of these, they will default to nothing, but you can come in here and just say, actually, I want this to have a beveled profile, and we'll get a head molding showing at the top there. You can see that sitting up top, and you can set the values for that. Same for the jam moldings. You get jam moldings all the way around there. You can set offsets for the jam moldings as well if you need those. The exterior trimming. Let's go with colonial profile, which again will go all the way around. They allow you to set offsets, and you can also control what you want them to do when they interact with a sill. So if they want to cut to the sill, or if they want to continue on over the sill, and then you can also choose where the trim should go. So if you don't want it going all the way around, you can turn off part of it. So say don't apply to the sill, for instance, or something like that. And then the last one is the setting for the actual sill. So we can go in here and say a sill, and you'll see that sill is attached to the bottom of the window. So that's the exterior trims, and then we also have some interior trims as well, which work in a very similar way, only there are less options for those. So you can come in here and say what kind of trim you want. You can't really see it from this side except for the fact that the window has been inset because of them, but you've got control over the settings for them again here and how you want them to interact with the sill. So again, we could turn off the sill and you'll see it disappears from there and that sort of thing. So that is the interior trims. And then the rest of these settings mostly just cover the way that it is displayed. So for instance, we can come in here and go to glazing panel surfaces. We can select individual panels and tell them to have different glass types, for instance. So we could say these two that I have selected, the glass should be blue rather than clear. And this one here, I don't have any glazing bars, but I could change the color of the glazing bars or something. So you can control the way that it represents in 3D here, and then there's further settings for each of the individual parts through here. I won't go through and look at all of those in details, but they're self-explanatory once you look at them. The rest of the stuff I'll leave off for now, because that's getting into a bit more technical aspects, I guess. But the main big ones are the key dimensions, the shape, the frame, and the trims. Those are the ones that probably you will want to look at when you're getting into more detail for your windows and doors. So I'll hit OK here, and you can see the changes get applied based on what we just did there. So you can see that material for the glass has changed, which is what we wanted it to do. So hopefully you can see, by seeing all of those options that are available, the different amount of stuff that you can do and just the degree of detail that you can get to when you are designing your windows and doors. I am running a little bit out of time, but I also just want to quickly show you the door tool as well. So I'll jump back over to here. Let's delete our window, and instead we'll create a door. So again, just going to the door tool. This works on a similar approach in that there's not one this time, but very few doors to choose from here. You do need to choose at the beginning which one of these three to use, however. Garage door, you can probably guess why you would want to use that. That's just for doing garage doors specifically. So we've got roller type, tilt type, or sectional lift type doors there. But the other two main door types are the Ci Tools door or the door exterior. You can kind of get a little bit of a hint as to what the two of them are best at based on their previews here. The Ci Tools door is good for doing interior doors, or just sort of what I guess maybe you would call normal doors. So they are relatively straightforward doors that have a door inside a frame or multiple doors inside a frame. Whereas the Ci Tools door exterior is aimed at doing doors with a large amount of glazing in them generally. If you need to do sort of advanced or just unusual glazing setouts in your doors, something like maybe ranch sliders or something like that, the Ci Tools door exterior is generally better for doing that. You can get away with using one or the other in most cases. It's just that in some cases, if you have a very specific type of glazed door that you want to use, you're going to be able to get more control out of the exterior door over that glazing than you would be with the internal door. So generally I would recommend that you use this one if you're thinking it's going to be something relatively heavy on glazing for your door. Otherwise, Ci Tools door will do pretty much what you want. I'll just walk through the settings quickly here, but it works in a very similar way to the window tool. So you have your key dimensions as we saw in the window. You can see a little set out of them here. We've got the shape, which is the same. You can choose the head shape from that, and the adjacency rules here are the same. So you can choose whether you have a frame on the head, or if the sides end in a frame or a post, or just end in no frame at all. You can see it just takes it off entirely. It calls it glass joint, but for a door it's not really that. The door type is the type of door that's actually placed into the opening that we're creating. So we can choose to say do a closet door, or a surface slider of some sort or some bifolds, choose the type of door, and then set the number of leaves. So we can say we want 4 of those. They're 790 wide and they're bifolds, so you can see we have those all set up there now. And then you can set the same thing for the other side as well, and there's some offset settings as well, and that sort of thing. Glazing panels is to insert glazing panels into your door construction, so you can see how it's set up at the moment as corner lights, but you can choose any type of setup of how the glazing should be, and then those will be placed into the door based on what you have set here. So at the moment you can see my C and B values, which are the side lights. Those are both 0, but if I turn on one of them by entering something that's not 0, you'll see that appear there. If I enter a G value for the height of the overlight as well, you'll see that appear, and you can see that it's adding the corner light in because that's what my setout is set to corner lights. If I go to no transom, you'll see that it does that instead. So you can set out how that should work there, and then you can set out what happens in the individual side lights, overlights, and corner lights here as well. And this is quite similar to the window tool. So you come in here and you choose which of the types of windows you want those to be, and it will apply that there. And the same for the overlights and corner lights, they work the same way. The frame settings are again very similar to the window tool. You set whatever you want to for the frame, then you can go down to the sill profile and the inner frame settings. The glass settings are the same as for the window tool as well, and then the door leaf is the other thing that you will want to do for a door, which is unusual to doors, which is to set the setout of those leaves. So you can see at the moment they default to just a sort of a blank leaf, but we can come in here and say actually we want them to have big parts of glazing, or we want to have a setout of a whole bunch of different panels, like one of these. So let's insert some tongue and groove panels. You can see the different colors here set out what we're actually doing. So the darker blue ones are panels and the lighter blue ones are glass. So if I choose one of these, you'll see they're just filled with the panels. But if I choose one with darker blue on the bottom and lighter on top, we get glass on top and the tongue and groove panels on the bottom. So you can change the way that the leaves themselves actually look here. That's for the left side, and if we change to the right side, it will control the right side panels as well. They will default to doing the same thing, but if you tick this box here, they can do different things. And then along with the similar trim settings to what we had in the windows, we also have hardware settings. So you can choose what kind of handles you want to display on your doors. So you can come in here and say, let's put some vertical rods on those. And we'll put them on rectangular plates. Go. And we can add a kick plate as well if you want to, as in here, so that will apply that too. So that covers off most of the things that you probably will want to do with your doors. And then, same as before, we can just go ahead and place it like a normal window or door. That's too big for the wall, but anyway, you get the idea. And that has placed our door for us. You can see it's got the stacked up door leaves showing over on the right here, because that's the side we had it set to. And if we go to 3D, you can see a nice setout of doors with the hardware that we selected and the panel types and all of that sort of thing. So that is the door part of the CI Doors and Windows tool. Cool. Okay, well, thanks everyone. I will finish up for now. As I say, if you have any other ideas for things you would like to see in this webinar, please just log a support ticket. Just say, hey, could you show me how to, I don't know, create a build envelope using the site tool or something. Send that through and that will make its way to me, and I can cover that in a future version of the webinar. But thanks for your time. It's been good